Okay, so we're back to our guy here. As you can see, I've added a little bit more hairs, duplicated one side to the other, added some hairs from below. So now we have a couple of problems because my hair cap kind of ends around here and my blob ends around the same area. The result is I have them kind of snapping in line like this, which is no good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select some of my hairs here, then convert to components, and then control right click to first CV. I'll just move it further away and just gonna blend it a little bit into the neck. If I bring it close enough, I don't really have to bother with problem. There we go. There we go. So now, because I want to fill those areas inside here, I want to be able to cover the entire surface, I would need to either take it into XGen or duplicate them by hand and then move the roots kind of manually like this. Or alternatively, I'm just going to use this hair grabber. There we go. There we go. So I'll have to use this to fill in between. So I'll just freeze and reset my transforms. Go here, freeze, reset. And you see I renamed everything. It's just nice to have everything organized and have nice naming convention and such. Then I can get in here and just fill with a single or a two. So I can go two at the same time. I'm going to change a couple things here. I don't want to snap. And I think that will do it. I'll just kill in history after I did this. So I'll go again. Do the same thing. And I think I'm also gonna go... where am I? I don't care for the hair blob, but the hair cap, I'm just gonna make it untouchable. And that should do it for me. Yeah. Then maybe put our guy on a layer here. I'll just put the whole thing on a layer. And also, I don't want to grab anything by mistake. Okay, there we go. So, grab these two guys, maybe put three in betweens, and just keep on going until at least I have some fills here. Something like that. Again, I'm not going to be extra careful here with this stuff. I'm just filling the hairs. Let's get one here as well. I think I accidentally undid it. Go from here to here maybe. Cover more distance, and I think this most probably will do. Go one here. One and done. Okay, there we go. So now we have the interior parts. Now another thing I can do is I can select all of my beard. You see I separated it into beard. I can put these guys back in here. And if you want to mass rename them, we can just select everything and go like this. And then we have all of their names. That's my beard. And then I feel like I want to maybe separate the mustache, so let's separate the mustachios, like so. I'm going to group them, and then parent them underneath my next groom here. which I guess it already is. That's gonna be stash, and then that's gonna be beard curves. There we go. Collapse this thing and just get them closer together. So you see, I'm constantly trying to organize it, and I might actually move these guys to the stash as well, just because they're so short. Cool. So now I have stash, beard, and then for the stash, I might even select these guys and just give them a bit of a thickening around here, just like so. Like that, and that should do it. Cool. So now we have all that. Another thing we can do is we can select all of our hairs here, all of our curves here, and convert to tips. So if I go here to CV and then to last CV, I get something like this. I can deselect the ones that are super short because I don't want to affect them. There we go. And then I can get a bit of a stronger transition, and then I can just randomize them. So if I go to global parameters, I can raise this slightly and just get the move to happen in all three axes. And then this one over here will randomize them. As you can see, they're moving a little bit, and I think that will do for me right now. And we get a bit of a more messy result, which is exactly what I want. Awesome. So now I have my curves. Let's for now hide the hair. It's gonna be hair, or yeah, head, hair, curves. Hide that and just concentrate on the mustache. So again, I'm going to create my XGen description. So let's go XGen, boom. I'm gonna select my beard cap and jump in here. Oops. Jump in here, create interactive groom splines, beard splines, 20, let's do 36, I think is what I want. I think that's what I want. Let's start with 33 and go from there. And then width is 0.01, and then density, let's do like 20. Let's see what we get. So we get something like this. Density could be definitely increased. So let's double up on our, there we go, on this guy. Attribute editor on the bottom, and then I can start kind of cranking up the density. I can make my individual hairs a bit thicker, but we will play around with that. The beauty is we can always change that value. So a couple of things I want to do. First of all, I want to create a clump modifier, but before that I want to also create a guide modifier. So I'll move it underneath my sculpt and maybe even underneath my scale. Yeah, I'll put it on the bottom here, and then I can create, basically use my curves to define that thing. So I'll go here to my stash and beard curves, select all of those guys. Actually, before I do that, I go back to this guide, and I'm just gonna pin it so I can select everything, and this is not going to change, right? So I can select all of them and then use selected curves, and that is fine. So there we go, we have our guides now. We can open it up, and we have a couple nodes added. If I cancel my pin tab, I can go into here and I can play around with my thickness. Let's see if I can find that. There we go. With scale, just make it a bit thinner so it's not so obnoxious, and also hide my curves. So there we go. that will do. Change the background so I can see better and get out of isolation. So there we go. Now we have our guides driving our beard, which is kind of cool. Next, what we're going to do is create a clump. So there is our, and yeah, the clump needs to live outside of our guide, right? So I'm just going to actually maybe undo it and just put it right here. So create clump, and then just get it underneath here. There we go, there's our clump. Now, what we want to do is basically we want to use input points so we can drive it with our, we can basically decide each one of these control curves is going to be a clump. So that's the part that is a little bit tricky right now. So I'll show you how to do that. Basically, we have to go to the node editor, and then we need to, with the clump selected, we can get it all splayed out in front of us and kind of get in on this portion over here. So here we have our clump. We can expand it. You see we have input points. And basically what we need to do is take the spline data from here and connect it to the input points over here. So now what that is going to do is basically nothing until we make sure that our splines over here have the correct CV count. So I think it would be 36 for our current situation here. And you see now we're getting them to nicely kind of redistribute. Okay, so next what are we going to do? We're going to paint some maps. So we have density, and we can create a density map. Just make sure you put it in the correct folder. I'll just drop it. Let's see, let me find a good place to drop my folder. There we go. Create a map, and just gonna paint real quickly. If you take a look at my settings here, let's shrink it down a bit. So basically I can control what kind of effect I'm going to get. So if I do something like this, I'll have a bit of an easier time. But you see here, it doesn't quite eliminate everything, unfortunately. So then I can kind of keep clicking, and sometimes that helps, but sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just going to switch to paint effects and just get it to completely remove some of these guys. And I can just get in here. And if it's working too slowly for you, we can always lower the amount of hairs, and I think it will react a little bit faster. So we can now start shaping where our hairs are growing from. And if you hold Control as you're painting, you will paint the reverse color. So that's cool. We can get in here and we can start using our stylus pen and get some of this stuff removed. I'm not really gonna go too deep into it. I'll just remove it from areas where it's clearly not being affected by any guides. You see here, and definitely this whole area, like we might just want to put some stubble in there if anything. And here we can kind of recreate it perhaps, or something like that. Again, I'm going pretty rough. I would expect you to put a little bit more TLC into that process. This will do for now. So we got a nice beginning here. Like, this is actually decently close to what I want it to look like. Now I can start playing around with maybe adding a little bit of noise, and maybe even adding another sculpt modifier on top of what we already have here. So it's possible to put sculpt modifier on our clump. So if I go here.
Okay, so I'm back here recording, doing a bit of a voiceover, the video, because I had to record quietly. In any case, I'm coming in here and starting to paint out some of the areas where I don't want my hair to grow necessarily. You can also just flood the whole thing with black and then paint in the areas where you want it to grow. But I think in this case, we want most of the geo to grow some hair out of. So I'm just gonna skip over the parts that are repetitive with the voiceover and come back to you in a little bit when I'm doing something new. Okay, so here you see I'm seeing that I'm going a little bit too slow for my liking, so I'm lowering the amount of generated geo here, or generated splines that I'm creating, and now the painting process is going much faster. You can get your stylus involved, and going in a zigzaggy kind of S-curvy way will be a nice addition. And you see here, I think it would be a good idea, closer up there, to actually introduce a bit more guides. I did not bother to do that, but I suggest that you just, like, if there's something is missing, just go back, paint those, rebuild them to the same amount of CVs that we're using and the rest of them. So you can always check what is the amount and then bring them into our into our XGen guides. So you can see here I'm introducing another sculpt and I'm putting it directly inside of the guide node, and I'm activating it by clicking on that edit button, and now I can use all of my sculpting tools directly on my guides. So you can see here I can now get in and start adjusting them, and the hairs will follow. And from here we can make a whole bunch of adjustments to our initial guides. So I let the visuals speak for themselves right now, but you can see it's tricky to do it on a kind of individual basis and not to affect a bunch of other guides in the area. So keep that in mind. And sometimes it's not the best approach, but you see here we can make some adjustments um, and get like a lot of our hairs to react and to follow. So here you see me kind of looking around for a while. I found my region map and it's under the guide. So now I can decide how my guides are going to interpolate by painting regions. So regions react to colors. So I'm going to select a color and paint it into an area. The only reason I'm doing this is I want my center of the mustache, kind of the Cupid's bow area, to split in a nice way. I don't want them to interpolate in between. So you see here I'm adding a bit of red, and on the opposite side I'm gonna add a bit of blue. And I'm just using control to use the opposite of the current color that I have. And I'm just playing around with, okay, how do I want it to split? Maybe here I would want it to be a little bit more like this. Oh, there we go. And I'm just kind of going in there and adjusting it. So here I'm comparing my original curves with my guides, and I'm just making sure that things didn't shift too much because they do have a tendency to shift away from the initial place. They get smoothed out the more I mess with them. So a good practice is to remove and re-import my original curves. So you'll see me do that on a couple of occasions. I think I'm going to do it again here. So here we go. I select all of the curves that I have in my node here, remove them. So you see the beard goes into its initial position, just sticking out of the normals. And now I'm locking my node there in view, in the attribute editor, and re-importing them. And you see we get a nicer correlation that we lost a little bit after all of the edits that we made. So I'm going to hide my curves again. But I can see that, okay, we're getting like a reasonably nice correlation now. So from here, what am I gonna do next? Let's see. So I'm unpinning it, and then I'm kind of lowering the density. So I'm assuming I'll do some sort of oh yeah, I'm raising the density, I guess, to see how it looks. And I think I'm gonna add another clump, most probably. Oh no, I'm starting to add the noise. Okay, so adding the noise, very important part of the process. So here you see I'm lowering the frequency and raising my magnitude. So it goes pretty crazy, right? Like we don't need a beard to be that messy. But what I'm doing here is I'm going to use an expression basically to make the noise only affect a certain amount of my hairs. So I'm looking for the appropriate expression, and there it is, percentage mask. Or maybe not. Yeah, percentage mask. So I'm gonna bring the node editor, and with my noise node selected, I'm gonna zoom in here. There it is. And I'm gonna create an expression node. So hidden tab, expression, that's the wrong one, xgem expression. There it is. And I'm going to attach it most probably to the mask value. So it will activate or deactivate the effect of the noise. And now in the expression, I'm just going to paste whatever I saw earlier. And you see it gives me an error. So usually for me, the solution was to just erase that last part and just keep the expression on this. And then if I reverse it and hit apply, you see now my clumps go back to their original shape, and then some of the hairs now are stray. So that's super cool because it gives us this cloud-like effect around our nicely shaped clumps. So now I'm going to introduce another noise, and this noise is going to work over everything. And it's going to have less of an effect. So I'm lowering the frequency, lowering the magnitude. And that way I get hair that looks a little bit nicer. This is my original noise, and this is my noise 2 that affects everything. So I think what I'm going to do next here is most probably change the way it interpolates across the length of each hair. So you see magnitude scale, I want the tips to not get that far away from each other. So you see me lowering the effect of the noise on the tips. And now you can see that is the case. I'm introducing cut. So cut will basically use another expression to cut the length of our hairs. So you see here, just cutting them equally. So we need to introduce an expression to make sure that our cut is cutting things the way we want it to. So there it is. Expand, create another expression. And I think I'm bringing over the kind of expression that I want. Now here I'm gonna get a little bit confused with how to do this because I haven't used this expression in this groomable version of XGen before. So I'm going to go a bit of a, there's gonna be a bit of a back and forth, so feel free to just kind of fast forward over that time. Yeah. Okay, so you can see that now the expression is working, and I realized that we don't necessarily need to multiply it by the length of each hair because the feature already exists within the cut node itself. So you see here, if I go to the cut node, it's absolute or relative. So if we keep it relative, it's relative to the length of each hair, and then the percentage is how much it will cut. This didn't really do anything for me, and the redistribute in CVs will kind of redistribute them equally after it cuts the hair. I don't want that. I want to kind of preserve my shape as best as I can. So now we have some varying lengths to our hairs, which is kind of nice. And I'm introducing a secondary clump that's going to have a really high value because I want to have like subclumps. So you'll see me do the thing of like really raising the density. I'm like seeing that it's not affecting anything because I'm messing with the wrong clump. So I'm selecting the correct clump here, moving it down to where I want it to be, right over the original clump, and then I'm getting it to the correct value. So you see here, this is way too low. This is still too low most probably, so I'll take it around like 22. And now I'm kind of getting more or less what I wanted. So I'm just checking, okay, is it looking the way I want it to look? Okay, it looks pretty sweet. Let's see the effect. I'm canceling or disabling the noises right now just so I can see the effect and see if I'm like happy about it. I'm playing around with the characteristics of my clump here. So I'm going to introduce some noise, and I'm going to introduce it on the clump level. So there's my noise. You see it has no effect right now because I didn't activate the noise scale ramp. So you see it's doing something, but it's just such a low value. So I have to definitely take it to further than 1. And where we go. Now we have some nice noise effect, and we have nice subclumping taking place. So I'll be playing with this for a while until I'm satisfied. Now I'm not satisfied with my secondary clumping creating an effect on the mustache. It really splits it in a way that I'm not liking. So I'm going to mask out the effect in some of these areas. At first I'm masking it out in areas where it really splits in directions that I'd never intended. But then later on I'll remove it, I think, entirely from the upper portion of the mustache. So you see here, by playing with the width scale, it really deforms the actual control guides. So I'll have to re-import them again. So keep that in mind. Certain things will break our system, but luckily we can just re-import them. So you see now I already remember to pin my tab. I just don't remember which way to go here. There we go, remove. And that's how it looks with just the modifiers. And then I'm going to re-import my curves yet again. So selecting the curves themselves, there we go, back into business, looking pretty sharp. So we're getting a bit of separation, we're getting different lengths, we're still getting a little bit too much craziness going on here, so I think I'm gonna go in and cut it out of those areas. And as you can see, by removing the subclumping from the central area in the mustache here, they're not trying to clump into the opposite side, and I have a nice split that I defined in my previous clumping setup. So there we go, save in file. So I'm creating a new sculpt modifier, and you see it sits outside of my guides. So the previous sculpt modifier was sitting on top of my guide node, and it was affecting the guides specifically, and the guides then in turn were controlling the individual hairs. You see here I'm lowering my density so I can actually work faster. So we can constantly change the density higher or lower, so we can work a little bit faster and not get affected by all of that geo being generated. In any case, now, as you can see, I'm sculpting directly on the hairs themselves. And you see I got the edit button red, which means it's activated, and that layer is now activated. And I can add as many of the sculpting layer as I want. If I want to separate certain aspects of sculpting, I can totally do it like that too. So you'll see here I'll be using the freeze brush just to show you how to use it. I'm not necessarily needing it here in this case, but it still is a good idea to use it because you can have a much more abrupt transition rather than this kind of soft effect like I'm having right now. So you see me moving things and I have a very soft influence. But then if I freeze some of the hairs, I'll have a much more abrupt transition. So I'm just reshaping it a little bit, giving it a bit of a more hands-on look so you can really get in there and get the kind of waviness that you're looking for. If you're looking for like a specific kind of curl to happen, if you're looking to isolate a specific clump, you can just freeze the hairs around it and then isolate that clump. Here I'm just kind of isolating a whole bunch of them together, and you can see also that I have noise 1 higher than my sculpt layer, and that basically means even though I'm sculpting, the noise is still being applied on top. If I had the sculpt layer higher than the noise layer in the hierarchy, then it would smooth out that noise, and I don't want to do that. I want to maintain that level of noise. I want all of my hairs to maintain that noise. So you see here I can reverse my my freezing of the hairs, so I can kind of split these two exactly where I want them to split. So you can see that freezing is very useful, very nice to incorporate it, and you can always clear the whole thing. And then you see I did a bit of adjustments on the right side, so most probably I'm gonna go in now and try and move it, you see, using the move brush, just creating some more interesting silhouette here. Kind of getting this down, pulling this out, and pay attention that we can use collision with meshes, so we don't accidentally have our hair collide all the way into our geo here. There's an option there. If you see on your tool settings, there's collide with meshes. So pay attention to that. I'll activate it later. Now here on the mustache, like I was kind of looking to give it a bit more of a flow. So it's a great opportunity to use the sculpting and kind of get on top of what we already created by using our more kind of faster approach of using guides. And now we can really get in there and influence that and get it more wavy. And we can always isolate it if we really want to do that from the rest of the hairs. Here I'm just not really bothering with that, but it's up to you how far you want to take this. There are brushes that I'm not covering here, but I think I'm giving you here quite a nice amount of information. And if you're looking to just sculpt it from scratch, you could just sculpt the whole thing like this. Because you can control length, you can control width, you can control basically everything with those brushes. So if somebody prefers a much more hands-on approach than what I'm doing here, then feel free to do that. I feel like my approach is faster. So yeah, it's up to you the way you want to do this. And again, I'm going even faster than, I would otherwise go. If I was sitting down and having all the time to kind of really get in there and go for like absolute top quality, I would go a bit slower and more planned about it. But the beautiful thing is I can add or remove my guides as I'm going here. So I can just make more curves, add more guides, and keep on refining. Another thing I would do is maybe a separate hair system for the transition from his face into the hair. So I would create some shorter hairs there and have like a bit of a more interesting transition area from his cheek to the beard. Right now I'm going like nothing basically to everything, and that's a little bit rough. So I'm not going to cover that, but just know that the option exists. And here you see I'm trying to smooth it out, but it's going way too intense. So I'm just going to lower my strength and then get in there and just, get them to be more parallel, more simple. In that area of the mustache, I feel like that would be the case. Again, you can take this further in a whole bunch of different places. So we get a nice silhouette now. The beard reads really nice, at least according to my standards, and we are ready to move on. So here I am creating a geometry for the eyebrows. And again, I'm just separating some geo here. We could have totally also done it directly on the face geo, but I feel like it's a little bit easier to control it when the amount of the geometry is limited. So I'm just trying to figure out, okay, how much room do I want to give my eyebrows? Like how far are they going to span in reality? So I'm basically thinking about that and then adding a little bit, just in case. Sometimes you want to have like a soft transition, some kind of baby hairs growing around your eyebrows. So I'm just kind of trying to prepare for that. I'm going to push it out a little bit. Remember, in order to be able to select it nicely, it's nice when it's just slightly more bulging than your original geometry. And now I'm going to adjust the UVs a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm doing a bit of organization here, just adding it into the layer, adjusting the UVs. And I'll just inflate. The current UVs are good enough. You see, I didn't select the actual geometry. And now I can select it because my hair cap layer is deactivated. So you see me struggling a little bit, trying to figure out like what is going on. There we go, I figured it out. So now I'm just gonna move it up. Or not up actually, I'm gonna keep it centered. And I'm going to create a new hair system on top of this. I don't know what I'm trying to figure out here. I guess I'm just gonna give it a final check. And I'm gonna start painting my curves on it. So I definitely need to lower my distance. I think I'm gonna have some issues here with the way it's being painted. We shall see. And I'm just going in there, painting these guys as best as I can. I think I'm gonna just skip that part in my voiceover. Okay, so here I'm just pushing them further away from the face, right? So my trick here to get this to happen is to select all of my CVs minus the first one. So I'm selecting the first CV, then shift select and everything else, removing soft selection, and then moving it out a bit. I think I'm gonna, yeah, I think that's what I'm doing. And I'm just gonna rebuild them to something that's reasonable. I think this is gonna mess them up way too much. You see, Maya is not great. I think I'm gonna do like a higher value, because the higher it is, the less these distortions are going to affect it when I smooth it. So there we go, I'm smoothing it. You see it's kind of averaging everything nicely. And now I'm kind of more ready to go with the eyebrows. Again, I'm not gonna make like the perfect eyebrow here. I'm going pretty fast, but group in my eyebrow. And then I'm basically going to duplicate it to the opposite side. So I'm gonna figure out which way to push it. I think that x-axis is the one I want to do, and also rename it along the way. And then center my pivot, reorient my rotation, very roughly. And then I'm gonna make a mistake, another mistake, and finally I find myself at the right place. So you can see that our orientation is incorrect because I didn't bake it, but it's easy enough to rotate it by hand. And there we go. So next, because we have a bit of an expression on the character, I'm going to use a deformer to make sure that the shape is matching his facial expression. So I'm aligning my camera to the average normal of the face, just so it sits nice. And now I'm gonna go in there and deform it by using a lattice. So very basic thing. Um, a very basic deformer used in animation all the time. Not too many modelers go for that straight out of the get-go. This is not something you usually learn in the kind of official school programs. Not every one of them will touch upon it, but I kind of discovered it more later on in my career, how useful lattices can be. So deforming it, trying to keep it relatively nicely snapped to my face here. There we go. And I'm gonna be doing it to the opposite side. I'm just gonna fast forward this. And here we go. Finally, I'm done with all the latticing and rebuilding and killing all of the history, just keeping it as clean as I can. And the, the proto eyebrows are there now. There are splines being generated. So I'm getting in here. Gonna start messing around with basically repeating all of the same steps you've seen me do before. So I'm gonna start with just creating just a black value around everything. So I don't have it growing anywhere. And then I'm just gonna start painting my hairs right over that area where I created my control curves. So I'm gonna skip this again and return when something new happens. And there we go. Now I'm ready to create my guide. There it goes. And I'm lowering it somewhere underneath the scale. And I'm gonna make sure that I pin this tab, select my curves. So that's how I select them, by isolating and selecting the actual curves themselves. Don't select the folders. I don't think it would work. And there we go. We have most of our splines adhering to the shape. So now what we have to do is just adjust where they're growing from. So we can go and paint that information. Once I increase the amount, you can see I can now start painting my density mask, or continue painting my density mask. So I'm just gonna skip that part as well, let it update. And another thing I'll be doing is aligning my clumps to my CV count. So whatever was the number of my CVs originally, I think I have to add 2 or 3 to that number, because it's the type of curve is like a cubic curve. So whatever the number of spans you thought it has a couple extra for interpolation. So not sure what, there's some math behind it. I'm not sure why. Just remember that there's like 2 or 3 more. So I'll have a bit of like a back and forth here, trying to make it work. In any case, it's the same process as we've used on our beard, the same process we're going to use on our eyelashes coming up. So here we go. I managed to connect them. You see that our clumps are correlated and we get quite a nice look. Again, too clumpy at this point, and I'm not even bothering there with all of the other like noise and other effects that we can apply. What we should do here, now I'm gonna be struggling a bit here with separating that middle eyebrow area where it fans. So I wasn't exactly sure how to do that, but I ended up just adding a couple more guides in that area and then removing some of that clumping because it was clumping too much for my liking. So I just reduced it so it can fan as it should. I think I'm starting by creating a sculpt and then fanning it with the sculpt, but then it just fanned it in all directions, and I wanted my fanning to stick to the surface more or less. Here I'm just adjusting a little bit. Here I'm sculpting specifically inside of my guide node, so I'm adjusting my guides. So I'll just get them to kind of snap a little bit better around the outer portion so they don't fan out too much. Again, I'm gonna skip this. And we're back. Eyebrows are good enough at this point. We can take them further. I just want to show you the process, not necessarily the final result. I think it's good enough. So now the next challenge is extracting geo around the eyelid area. The problem here is the geo is not fully adherent to the eye shape. So you see we have like some of our edges kind of drowning a little bit in the eye volume. So like if I was making a character here and this was my demo piece or final project piece, I would fix that correlation. I would make that edge loop correlate better with the eye. But because I'm just making a demonstration, I'm just gonna let it go for now. We're still gonna get a decent result, it's just not gonna be perfect. So first thing I'm doing here is extracting the curves, and I'm kind of looking for the best edge loop to use to extract my curves. So there you go. I have two curves representing the bottom and the top of my eyelash geo. So what I'm doing here is I'm duplicating them a couple times, and every time I duplicate them, I deform and move them forward. What this is going to help me with is creating geometry on which I will paint my eyelashes. So it's much easier for me to already have the curvature and paint my eyelashes directly on that curvature. So you'll see I'm constantly using this curve painting approach, and for better or worse, you can also extract the edge ring out of that geo, but I won't cover it this time because I need to install a script for that I still don't have installed. So I'll just give you this approach where we're just going to keep on painting just like we did before, keep it simple, and you see we're going to create a surface. So I'll come back when the surface is created. So here we go. Our lofting settings, make sure the quads are there, and general will give us this 3x3 geo, and now we can raise the number of subdivisions in a NURB tessellate node. Just make sure that you don't make NURBs, you make geometry when you use the loft command. So there I go, introducing more geo, as much as I need. I'm just kind of being random here. I just need a nice curvature and I can go over the top. I'm not using this geo for anything. It's just there to give me a canvas for my eyelash painting that's coming up. Okay, so painting process. I'm having a bit of trouble with, well, I'm going pretty fast here, but later on I'm having a bit of trouble, you see, with my stylus not reacting properly to press release. So I'm not having the curves gonna appear the way I want them to. Not sure exactly what was the issue, but it was giving me trouble. And then the last thing I'll do is, because I'm not starting all of my curves straight from the root, you see I'm really having trouble there. So I'm gonna be messing around with this, trying to figure out, okay, what am I doing wrong? Let's run it again. So it works now and then works again and then it's not gonna work. Anyway, I'm just painting these guys and I'm gonna move the roots closer to kind of the root area of this geo. I'll make the geo live and then select the roots and just move them closer to the base of it. Okay, so here I'm thinking about like, okay, I could take all of these edge rings and create curves out of those, but you'll have to go one by one if you don't have a script. I do have a script somewhere, I just didn't feel like looking for it. So this is the area where I'm deciding not to do it and just keep on painting. Okay, so now it's time to extract some geo for our eyelids. So I need somewhere to snap them to and to grow them out of. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not going too thick here. Again, if you have nice topology here, it will be a little bit easier. Here the topology is pretty good, but it's lacking in certain areas, as you can see. We don't need the caruncle for any of that stuff. We really want to kind of limit it for the areas from which we want it to grow. And there I go, creating another hair system, this time calling it eyelashes. Again, we can try and match the amount of CVs. I think I'll have some trouble just matching the appropriate amount there. So um, our clumps correlate with our control curves. So you see here the initial result is terrifying. I really don't wish on anyone this kind of eyelash condition. It looks very painful. But we are going to solve it over time. So as you can see, our clumps are not looking great right now because they are not directly related to the control curves. So they're kind of trying to clump all kinds of different stuff on different sides of our eye lash geo, so they're not really working that great. So what I'm going to do again is try and relink them together, and by doing for doing that, I need to um, rebuild my geo here, my splines here to the appropriate amount. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, like what is my CV count on my original? So I'm selecting it, going into script editor on the other screen and looking how many CVs does it tell me that I have. And I'm also making sure that all of my CVs have the same number, which I do. That is the case for me. So I'm going back in here and I'm gonna try and figure out what is the amount. If it's like 18 on the original, I think it needs to be like 19 on this one. So I think I'm gonna be just like monkeying around with this a little bit until I figure out the number. You see, and it's not working out, and I'm like, oh my god, what is going on? Um, it's like, why is this off? Because I hit it. So I'm gonna be monkeying here for a while. Let's just skip that. And there we go, 19 is the magic number. Everything's connected. We just have some eyelashes that are growing from inside of the eye, which is definitely not what we would be going for. I'm going to be playing with the shape of the individual strands now, of the individual splines. So right now they're just kind of straight lines. I want to give them a bit of a taper, so we can edit that, edit some taper from the eyelash spline node, and also remove any ones of them that grow and interpolate in a weird way, like they're trying to interpolate with the opposite side or something. So I'm just gonna mask those out. And you can see I'm getting quite a nice result. There we go. And now I'm gonna control my density, and you see the more density I add, the more there's a chance that something will go wrong. So there I go again, trying to reestablish the kind of splines that I want. And then I decide to play with the scale because I want them to be shorter, and everything breaks. So once I change the scale, and there I go changing the scale, and you see all of a sudden things are not working anymore. Something broke. So my solution to this is basically remove my guides, like the curves that I attached as guides, and reattach them. There seems to be some sort of an issue with the way the guides work, but it's easy enough because we saved our curves to reattach them and solve that problem. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. And here we go. My splines are, sorry, my curves are reattached as splines. And all I have to do now is clean up whatever areas where I'm getting them to misbehave. There we go. And a couple more spots here. And I can always hide the control curves there, and there we go. We got nice eyelashes. And of course we can go in there and really like add a bit more love to the eyelashes, maybe introduce some noise, whatever we want to do, clamp them up, more sculpt on them. All of those things that we were doing previously are also available here. And I only made one. I would expect you make both. So basically same process, you can do it on both eyes.